Welcome back to the channel. This here is my 2023 Ducati Panigale V2.
I do not claim to be a smart man.
I don't know that that really did anything for us. Ooh. I thought maybe it would be easier, but it is not.
I grew up riding dirt bikes and tinkering on motorcycles, but I'm no mechanic.
What are these called?
All I have is my intuition.
Unlatch it here, I believe. I can move this box and start getting the front header out of the way.
My love of all things on two wheels, and a deep-seated fear of failure.
I told you I'm not a quitter.
This bike started out a powerful machine that ripped through the streets. It was made for the track, but sadly, it has ended up here in my garage, very broken. Some have said it's a lost cause, destined for the scrap heap,
Falling apart.
but I think differently.
Continue forward.
My wallet may doubt me.
Now that I see this thing in its full glory, I hate it.
And in the end, I'm doing it for you, the viewer. And who am I to deny you?
In the last episode, we went over how much this motorcycle cost me. And for those of you who haven't seen that episode, go back and check it out. It's a good episode. But for those of you who did see it, you will remember that this motorcycle cost me around $2,200 to get to my home. MSRP on these motorcycles was around $18,000 to $25,000, depending on how much you added on to the bike when you purchased it. So for me, even in this condition, was a really good deal. At least I think so. Now, another big thing that we accomplished in the last episode was this space under here, the exhaust. We were able to remove the exhaust from this motorcycle, but we were not able to do the final step, which was to remove these headers, because this header is beaten really badly. And if you, again, remember, this clutch housing behind here is cracked. And I'll show you that clip here. And that full crack goes all the way back. No bueno. And so this needs to come off the bike. To get this off the bike, this header needs to come off. The header needs to come off anyways because it's broken. And so we have some more work to do. That's what I would like to do at the beginning of this episode. And then from there, I'm gonna move on to start taking some parts that were already off the bike because they were wrecked and ripped off the bike, and start taking those apart. Mainly the front wheel assembly and the two handlebars. I wanna see how much of that I can salvage, how much of that I can save. I'm hopeful that there's a good bit on both that is salvageable, and there's gonna be a lot that's not. But that's okay. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start digging into this bike. Let's get to it. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to loosen the final clamp for the headers itself. This clamp is connecting this rear header pipe that comes in and goes down and connects to the front header pipe. And then that should be it. We should be able to just loosen this clamp and drop that front header and get that off. I don't know that I need to replace this rear header right now. I don't know that we're gonna get a full exhaust system for this bike. They're really expensive, so. But let's go ahead, there's a bolt right down here, right there. So let's get that loose, see if we can drop this header.
It's a bit of a snug fit getting a tool back here to loosen this heavy-duty clamp, but with a little effort, it should come apart pretty easily.
Okay. Well, that was easy. Front header off. And as you can see, that thing is fully smashed. She broken. So that's garbage. One less thing for us to worry about, and well on our way to getting this thing fixed. Very exciting stuff. And like I was saying, what I want to do now is start tearing down pieces of the motorcycle that are already off the bike, just because when it got wrecked, they were torn off the bike. The handlebars are one of the first things I want to tear apart. Weirdly enough, they don't look that bad. I did have to remove them from the bike when I took them off the truck, but that was really just the wiring harness, and that even looks okay. So there's always hidden damages, so we're gonna tear them down to the studs and see what needs to be seen, see what parts need to be replaced, and go from there. Right off the bat, we're gonna start with the throttle. And with Ducatis, I never understood why there's so much slop in these throttles. The Diablo was the same way, and it seems like a very universal thing that Ducatis need spacers in their throttle housing to get rid of this slop. The BMW does not have that. A lot of bikes that I've tested out or have sat on don't have that. Why Ducati does, I'll never know. But we're gonna tear it down and see if the handlebar itself is bent. If so, we'll need to order a new one. But those are like 40 bucks, so that's the least of my worries. And again, most of the stuff on here looks like it's in pretty good shape. So I think we're doing okay.
The throttle side comes apart really easily. Just an end bolt and some screws from the throttle housing. And off she slides.
Everything looks good here. And this here and here are where the spacers would end up going. So this is what turns. You drop spacers here and here, and that's what allows there to not be so much slop. There should be a nub here and a little nub here that slot in here and here, but they're no longer there because of the accident. They were probably just broken off. But that's easily enough to fix. Great, now we have our throttle. Perfect.
Next, we're going to move on to the throttle side controls. It's just these two screws, and then it should come off really easily.
Okay, so just noticed the top screw is longer than the bottom screw. Make sure we remember that. Slide it out. Now it doesn't come all the way apart because the wires inside are holding it together. Make sure not to pull those apart. Let's drop these in here so we don't lose them. Good to go. Something unfortunate, just noticed with this ignition switch here, we have some wiring damage. So that's no good. What I'm probably gonna end up doing is taking this apart to see if it's fixable. I would think that'd be something that's fixable. These little wires here, if we can zoom in on them and see, that should be pretty doable. But I do want to make sure to open the whole thing up and see that those are the only areas of the wires that are damaged, fix those, and be able to go from there. All right, last but not least, we have the brake master cylinder and the actual clamp itself.
Again, the whole point of this teardown is to find broken parts to replace, like this one. It's not a hard part of the build or time-consuming part of the build, but it's definitely worth it to understand the motorcycle more thoroughly and to find broken pieces now rather than later.
Awesome. And this is actually where the steering dampener should be connected to. Luckily, we got a new one in. Remove that, and that is garbage. And with that, we have our first handlebar out, and to be honest with you, from what I can see, this thing may be straight. That's kind of wild to me. I have a straight edge. Let me get that and we can double check. Also, this clamp looks like in really good shape too. All right, we have my handy dandy straight edge here. And it doesn't really matter where it sits on this, but what I can do, and look at that. That thing is perfectly straight. And even if there was like the tiniest little bend in this thing, I wouldn't be too worried about it. But there's not. It's great. It's in really good condition. I mean, there's a little scuffage, but it's covered up, so who cares? Now the clutch side should be fairly similar. This side actually fared a little bit better, which is good news for me. The mirror stayed intact. Brand of the mirror is, see if we can get to focus, CRG, whatever that is.
The clutch side, for the most part, is very much just a rinse and repeat of the throttle side. And here we are just making sure we have all the right pieces and understand how they go back together.
Great. The grip itself is actually just going to be cut away. So we're going to get new grips. And then we're going to go for everything else. So bolt here, 2 bolts here, 1, 2, and 2 bolts here, 2 bolts.
I always love these more lightweight projects when it comes to rebuilding these motorcycles. They're a little bit more low risk, but they do have some quick wins. And here, a quick win is we can see the little nub survive the crash.
This one looks like it could be a little warped, which is never great news. This final one out. 1, 2. There we go. So this bracket should have this nice and set right up like this here, but broken off. Luckily, this is still attached to the fluid reservoir. It's just this bracket itself that needs to be replaced. So that's not that bad at all. Now the clutch side we may have issues with. I can already see just by the naked eye a little bit of a bend up at this end, I believe, or at this end. It looks a little wonky. It looks a little like a banana. And you can tell by this section here, there's a slot in the bar itself where the bolt of the clamp slots in here to make sure it's aligned perfectly, and that's kind of chewed up by the bolts itself. So that just to me means that it got hit and shifted, and so this may be warped. Let's check it out on the handy dandy straight edge. So yeah, I can already see at the top there, it's wanting to come in and touch. Yeah, it's a good maybe millimeter, maybe less than that, but it's bent. It's bent for sure. And this is like 40 bucks. I'd rather spend 40 bucks than 80 bucks. And I'd rather spend 40 bucks than have a bent handlebar. That's not a bad deal. So get a new handlebar, probably get some new levers for the clutch and the brake, and then we should be good to go to put things back together for that side of the bike. Oh, and a little electrical work, but that's fun work, so who cares? Today what I'd like to do is one thing for sure, and maybe 2 or 3 things. One thing I would like to do today, and what we are going to get done today, is taking this clutch housing off the bike. It is mega cracked, and we have the tools to get it off the bike. We have the replacement part to put it back on the bike, but I don't know if we'll have enough time today for the new one to be installed. I just want to make sure I do it right, and that takes time. And then the second thing I don't know if we'll have time to do, I'm almost positive we won't have time to today, is this front clutch plate right here. There are a couple of nicks in it down here at the bottom, and then here in the corner. That one's probably the one that makes me the most nervous, but it's really not terrible. I'm not even sure if it's gonna have that much negative effect on the bike. I have a replacement for it though, so it might as well come off. We can check over everything and then put the new one back on. But I don't know if we'll have time for that today, so we're gonna get the clutch house off. If we have time for something other than those things, we'll do that. We'll see how it goes. To remove the clutch housing, there are 17 bolts all around the casing. Taking the bolts off of this clutch housing, there are 3 different types of bolts. There are the smaller hex head bolts. They look like this, and they make up probably around half of the bolts around. So all the way around the bottom are the hex head bolts. Then at the top of the clutch housing, there are these bolts here, which are essentially hex-headed bolts with thread coming out the top of them. And that makes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top bolts. But then there is one specific hex head bolt that is longer than the others that is right here at the top, right here. I believe that's the set bolt. I'm not sure, but it's different, and you want to make sure you know it's different and make sure when you put it back in that you use the right one. And now that all the bolts are out of the housing, we can go ahead and try to knock it off. I have a rubber mallet for that, and we'll see if that does the trick, and we can just pull this off.
This clutch housing is not strong structurally. The crack in it definitely proves that. And with that knowledge, I want to make sure I'm very careful not to stress the engine block behind it. I definitely don't need to have a catastrophic failure because I couldn't take my time.
Should have known. All right, looks good. It is the next day here, and what I went ahead and did was clean up all of the residual sealant that was on the inside of this. So I took a wire brush and gently pulled off the sealant on this new housing. Now the part number for this new housing is 243-31491A. And weirdly, that is actually not the part number that Ducati shows is the part for this motorcycle on their website, and I'll show that to you here. This is a different part number, and I knew that when I purchased this. I knew that the part number was not exactly what Ducati was calling for when I purchased this piece. But this is the original part that came off the bike. So obviously it's still very messy here. It's the cracked piece. If you look closely inside here, 243-31491A. This is the original clutch casing on the bike from Ducati, and it's not the same part number as they have on the part manual. Why that's the case, I don't know. I know that it's the same part, essentially, that is used for a few different models. Makes me happy knowing that the part that I bought, even though it wasn't the exact right number, is going to be the exact right number for this motorcycle. With all that said, what I'd like to do now is go ahead and see about getting this clutch plate out. So we're going to undo these 3 bolts here, pull this out, replace this, and then put it back on. So I'm not actually going to remove the entire clutch itself, I don't believe. It's really just going to be that first plate there in the front. So it's going to be the bolts, the springs, and then that plate should be able to come off. From what I have in my repair manual, it's just 10 Newton-meter torque for these bolts, and that should be good to go back in.
I won't lie, this makes me more nervous than any other time in this rebuild, or in the Diablo before it. Like I said earlier, I'm no mechanic, and engine work is a daunting task. All I can do is go slow, take my time, and hope I don't break anything.
All right, ooh, that's come off here. Now my issue is I didn't think the bearings and everything inside would come off with it. That I'm gonna have to figure out how to get into the new one. So I have both parts here. I have the original with the bearings still inside of it, and just a couple of marks on the edge, which I don't think matter too much. And I have the new one. It's perfect, it just doesn't have the bearing in it. My first thought is I could probably just heat this up and knock it out. I've done bearings before. It's not that hard of a thing to do. My only issue is I don't have a great way to tap this in. I don't want to mess it up. So I may just end up putting this back in the bike and keeping this just in case. I think that's what I'm going to do. We definitely ran out of sunlight today, as you can see by now, the light setup here, for this clutch work that we've been doing. But I was able to put the clutch all back together here. We are still using the OEM face here, and that's again just because of this bearing inside. But it's really not that bad, and if we need to replace that in the end, if I was to share this video or share these photos with a Ducati mechanic and he's like, no, you really should replace that, we have the part. Once everything's in, it's really just taking the face cover off, not the entire clutch housing off. So I'm not necessarily worried about taking that back off again and replacing it completely. So for now, we're just going to move on from here. What I'd like to do is move on and get the clutch housing. So this bad boy, get this all prepped and ready to go. Actually, is this the right one? Yeah, this is the right one. This is the new one. I have already gone ahead and cleaned off everything from the inside of this. It's looking really good. I need to move over a couple of pieces onto this new one from the old one, and then make sure that everything here is nice and cleaned up. I did a pretty good job cleaning this already, and make sure all the areas down here below where there's oil left over, that I get that wiped out. That way the new sealant adheres nicely and everything goes in really good. So we're gonna prep this area. We're gonna prep the new clutch housing with the sealant, get that all ready to go, and then we're gonna hopefully install that tonight. We are gonna install that tonight.
Making sure to prep my workspace is half the battle with a project like this. It's a small step, but necessary in order to get, hopefully, the best results.
So I've gone ahead and prepped a couple of more things. It's really just the bolts for the clutch housing itself. They were pretty gunked up from the original OEM. They had sealant on them, they had Loctite on them, and so I wanted to clean those up. And so I went ahead and got them as close to cleaned up as possible. There's still a little bit on them, but they're pretty good. And so now that those are all prepped, I can go ahead and prep the clutch housing itself. And I wanted to be a part of that because I've never done that before. And so it's going to be applying the silicone sealant onto the clutch housing itself. So the sealant that we're going to be using is direct from what Ducati asked for. It is this 3-bond 1207B. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a thin bead around the outside of this housing, and then we're going to smooth it out. We're going to try to apply just enough that it gets the whole coverage, but doesn't do too much so there's not much leakage when this gets installed, leaving as little residue as possible that could leak into the engine itself.
As I'm sure many watching can tell, this is my first attempt at engine cover repair or any sort of maintenance. I really don't know if I'm overdoing it or if I'm underdoing it. All I know I'm doing is following the service instructions, and they say to apply an even bead and then spread the sealant to make an even coating before mating the surfaces. After I have the clutch housing in the right spot, I'm putting in each of the bolts, and each one gets a little bit of blue Loctite, a gentle placement with the drill, not too tight, and then I'll go around and torque them all down. I unfortunately don't have the correct pattern to torque them down. Shout out to D2 Power Sports in Greer, my local Ducati dealership that wanted to charge me an hour's worth of labor just to hand those over. But I did my best.
17. Okay, great.
The final step in this process is putting on the protection cover, and then finally I can step away from engine work.
Now these bolts get torqued down to 10 newton meters, 9 newton meters minimum, maximum is 11 newton meters. And this again has a specific sequence. That sequence I actually do have, and I will do as instructed. And that is going to be a wrap for tonight. At some point, we're going to get back to this. We're going to fill this with oil, make sure there's no leaks, and that should be the end of engine work for now, fingers crossed, and we can start moving on to some other things. Probably putting on the back end of this motorcycle because I have all the parts for that. There's a number of things we can do there. We can get all of that squared away and put together and start prepping for moving towards the front of this bike. We will actually not be moving onto the back of the bike just yet. And that's for a couple different reasons. One of them being I would like to continue doing something engine related, and that is a quick oil change. And we're not really gonna be changing any oil because I know already there's no oil in this engine right now. I know that because I went ahead and drained some of the oil that was left in here from previous, and there was basically nothing left in there. In doing so, I found something that definitely needed to be addressed. Something that I didn't include when putting all this back together was torquing down the 3 bolts that hold the clutch together. And that is very much because I didn't do that. I didn't actually torque them down. And how I figured that out was I actually had to take this apart, check the bolts, they weren't torqued, torque them down to 10 newton meters each, and go ahead and replace this clutch cover here, torque these bolts down in the pattern that we all know and saw already. But that's something that took about 5 minutes because there's no oil in the engine to drain out. And I didn't think that was something that was worth putting for a second time in the video, especially something that took just a couple of minutes. What I'd like to do now is to move to the other side of the motorcycle and check the filter. So that's what we'll do next. Now, fun fact, I was actually able to get the service history for this motorcycle at least up until about 1,000 miles or so ago. And I know that this has been fully serviced, so it had a full oil change, it had new filter, new everything. So my expectation is that this filter is probably perfectly fine. We're just gonna check it, make sure it looks clean, and then probably just put it back in for right now. With that said, this should be a fairly easy job because everything is off the bike. The oil filter is right down here, and it's just 2 bolts. Check it out, put it back in, be good to go, and we'll move on from there. Oh, I'm such an old man.
If you've stuck around so far, I really appreciate it. Drop a comment, let me know if there's any other projects I should tackle while I have the bike this way,
All right.
or if there are any details that I should dive into deeper.
This thing looks really good still. And so yeah, I think this is gonna be good to go to put back in and has a good amount of life left in it. So we'll go ahead and put this back together and then be able to put oil in the bike.
Some of you purists are probably screaming at me through the screen as I pour this mobile oil in. And yes, the service manual does call for Shell 4T Ultra, but they're both 15W50, and I'm sure for my everyday street riding, this will do the trick.
And just like that, I believe we are all set with this engine. I do think once I get it turned over and get it running, I'll probably have to put a little bit more oil in there just because it was completely empty and the oil had settled all the way out of the bike. It was completely bone dry. So again, once we turn it over, turn it on, probably have to put a little bit more oil just to top it up. But we are still a fair ways away from getting this motorcycle started, so that's definitely for another day. With that, thank you so much for watching. If you've liked this video, if you liked the video series so far, please consider subscribing. We're doing a lot of fun things here, and I'd love to have you stick around. Smash that like button, drop a comment. I try to respond to everybody who comments, so drop a comment and I'll make sure to hit you back. Again, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for sticking around. We'll see you next time. Bye. Smaller, I don't even know what these are. Hex 246.